Have you ever noticed how the people who seem the coldest are sometimes fighting the hottest battles inside themselves? Have you ever wondered why someone who once looked deeply into your eyes, who once smiled at your messages, who once made you feel seen, suddenly acts as though you never mattered? It's easy to believe they stopped caring. It's easy to assume that silence means absence of love. But life teaches a deeper lesson. Human behavior is not always a reflection of human emotion. Sometimes it is a reflection of human fear. There is an incredible difference between not feeling and not knowing how to express what you feel. Most people judge others by their actions, but very few understand the invisible beliefs driving those actions. Every behavior is fueled by a need. Every reaction is born from a story. Every emotional wall was built brick by brick through experiences that convinced someone they had to protect themselves at all costs. Think about this. A child isn't born afraid of intimacy. A child isn't born believing love is dangerous. Those beliefs are learned. Somewhere along the journey, disappointment taught lessons the heart never wanted to learn. Rejection whispered lies. Betrayal planted seeds of doubt. Pain convinced them that opening their heart would eventually lead to suffering. And once that belief becomes strong enough, the mind develops strategies to survive. One of the strongest strategies is emotional avoidance. The tragedy is that survival strategies often outlive the danger they were created to protect against. The walls remain long after the battle has ended. The armor stays on even when there is no enemy in sight. The person appears calm on the outside while carrying storms no one else can see. That's why understanding changes everything. When someone pretends they don't care, it doesn't automatically mean they feel nothing. It often means they fear what those feelings could cost them. They fear losing control. They fear depending on someone. They fear abandonment before it even happens. So instead of risking heartbreak later, they create distance now. Fear has an amazing ability to disguise itself as confidence. What looks like independence may actually be self-protection. What looks like emotional strength may actually be emotional exhaustion. And what looks like indifference may actually be love trapped behind invisible walls. The greatest battles are rarely visible. Every person is fighting a conversation inside themselves that the outside world never hears. One voice says, move closer. Another whispers, protect yourself. One says, trust. Another says, run. The strongest voice usually wins. If fear has been rehearsed for years, fear becomes automatic. This is one of life's greatest truths. Repetition creates identity. Whatever you practice consistently becomes who you believe you are. If someone has practiced emotional withdrawal for decades, distance begins to feel normal, even when it creates loneliness. But here's what changes lives. You cannot build lasting peace on temporary protection. Every wall that keeps pain out also keeps love out. Every locked door keeps both enemies and blessings outside. Eventually the soul grows tired of surviving without truly living. The human spirit was designed for connection. It was designed to give, to receive, to trust, to grow, to love without constantly calculating the risk. That doesn't mean wisdom disappears. It means fear no longer becomes the leader. There is a profound difference between discernment and avoidance. Discernment says, I will choose wisely. Avoidance says, I will choose no one. One creates freedom. The other creates isolation. And isolation has never healed a wounded heart. The heart heals through safe connection, honest conversations, forgiveness, and courage. Not perfect courage, just enough courage to take one step beyond fear. The remarkable thing about life is that transformation always begins with awareness. The moment you recognize that your reactions are not your destiny, everything changes. Your past may explain your behavior. It never has to define your future. Every breakthrough starts with one decision. The decision to stop allowing yesterday's pain to control tomorrow's possibilities. Because the future is built by today's choices, not yesterday's wounds. There is incredible power in understanding this principle. People don't change because time passes. People change because truth replaces old beliefs. When the belief changes, behavior naturally follows. When someone truly believes vulnerability is strength instead of weakness, they begin opening doors they once kept locked. When they believe trust can exist without losing themselves, intimacy becomes possible. When they believe love is not a trap but a gift, connection becomes natural. Every external result begins as an internal belief. That's why lasting transformation is always an inside job. No relationship can permanently heal someone who refuses to heal themselves. No amount of reassurance can replace self-belief. No amount of affection can silence fears someone continues feeding. Real confidence grows from within. Real peace grows from within. Real love grows from within. And once those roots become strong, every relationship becomes healthier because it is built on abundance rather than fear. If you're listening today because someone pulled away from you, remember this. Their emotional availability is not the measurement of your value. Never confuse another person's inability to express love with your worthiness to receive it. You are not defined by someone else's fears. You are not diminished by someone else's walls. You are not less valuable because someone struggles to let you in. Your value was established long before anyone formed an opinion about you. You were created with purpose. You were created with dignity. You were created with immeasurable worth that no rejection can erase and no silence can reduce. The Creator never intended your identity to be built upon another person's approval. Your identity is rooted in something far greater. When you understand that, you stop chasing validation and start walking in confidence. You stop begging to be chosen and begin choosing relationships that reflect mutual respect, honesty, and emotional maturity. Because healthy love never demands that you abandon yourself. Healthy love invites two whole people to grow together. Growth requires courage. Growth requires honesty. Growth requires forgiveness. Not because others always deserve it, but because your future deserves freedom from yesterday's chains. Every painful experience contains a hidden lesson. Every disappointment carries an opportunity for wisdom. Every closed door prepares you to recognize the right one. Nothing is wasted when you choose to grow. Pain can either become your prison or your teacher. The decision belongs to you. Today, choose courage over comfort. Choose truth over fear. Choose growth over stagnation. Choose faith over doubt. Choose purpose over pain. And remember this powerful truth every single day. The people who pretend they don't care are often carrying battles no one else can see. But your mission is not to rescue every guarded heart. Your mission is to become the strongest, wisest, most loving version of yourself. When you do that, you stop chasing what is unavailable and start attracting what is aligned with your values. You become a light instead of searching for one. You become a source of strength instead of seeking constant reassurance. And that is where true freedom begins. Not when everyone understands your worth, but when you finally do. One of the greatest misunderstandings people make is believing that emotional distance means emotional emptiness. When someone pulls away, becomes quiet, or seems unaffected, it is easy to conclude they simply do not care. But human psychology is far more complex than appearances. In many cases, avoidance is not the absence of love, it is the presence of fear. It is a survival strategy developed over years of emotional experiences that taught a person one painful lesson: getting too close can hurt. Think about it for a moment. No one enters the world believing that love is dangerous. We are naturally wired for connection. We long to be seen, understood, accepted, and loved. Yet life has a way of shaping our beliefs. Disappointment, betrayal, rejection, criticism, or emotional neglect can slowly convince someone that vulnerability comes with a price too high to pay. Instead of learning that relationships are places of safety, they begin to associate intimacy with pain. Their heart wants connection, but their mind sounds the alarm. Over time, that alarm becomes automatic. This is why many avoidant individuals seem calm on the outside while experiencing a storm within. They may genuinely care, but expressing those feelings feels risky. Rather than facing the possibility of rejection or disappointment, they instinctively create distance. Their silence is not always a message of indifference. Sometimes it is the language of self-protection. Their withdrawal is not necessarily because they stopped feeling. It is because they never learned that it was safe to feel openly. The challenge is that survival strategies often continue long after the original danger has disappeared. A person who once needed emotional walls to protect themselves may continue building those same walls even when they are surrounded by people who genuinely care. The past teaches the heart to expect pain, and unless those beliefs are challenged, the future becomes a repetition of yesterday's fears. What once served as protection eventually becomes a prison. There is a timeless truth found in the way we are designed. Fear may protect us from temporary discomfort, but it also prevents us from experiencing the fullness of love, trust, and meaningful relationships. The Creator did not design the human heart merely to survive. We were created to live with purpose, to build healthy connections, and to experience relationships founded on honesty rather than fear. When fear becomes the foundation of every decision, life begins to shrink. Opportunities are missed, relationships remain shallow, and loneliness quietly grows behind walls that once felt secure. This understanding should also transform the way you see yourself if someone avoidant has pulled away from you. Do not immediately interpret their distance as proof that you were not enough. Their behavior often reflects battles that began long before they met you. You think people respond according to the beliefs they carry inside, not necessarily according to the value of the person standing before them. Their inability to express love is not evidence that you are unworthy of receiving it. The greatest breakthrough begins when we realize that awareness creates choice. Survival strategies may explain our behavior, but they do not have to determine our destiny. Every person has the ability to rewrite old beliefs through courage, faith, and intentional growth. Healing begins the moment someone decides that yesterday's will no longer dictate tomorrow's relationships. When fear is replaced with trust, emotional walls become bridges. What was once a life spent hiding becomes a life filled with authentic connection, genuine peace, and the freedom to love without being controlled by the wounds of the past. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of communication. Most people assume that when someone stops calling, takes longer to respond, avoids difficult conversations, or seems emotionally distant, they have simply stopped caring. But silence does not always mean the absence of emotion. In many cases, silence is the result of emotional overload. Some people withdraw not because they feel too little, but because they feel too much and have never learned how to process those emotions in a healthy way. Imagine carrying a heart that desperately wants connection while a mind constantly warns that closeness will eventually lead to pain. That internal conflict creates tremendous pressure. Instead of expressing love, fear interrupts the process. Instead of saying, "I'm afraid of losing you," they say nothing at all. Instead of asking for reassurance, they disappear. Instead of admitting they are overwhelmed, they convince themselves that distance is the safest option. From the outside, it looks like indifference. On the inside, it often feels like emotional chaos. This is the hidden struggle of many avoidant individuals. Their silence is not always a calculated decision to hurt someone. More often, it is a defense mechanism that developed over years of protecting themselves from disappointment, rejection, or emotional pain. Somewhere along their journey, they learned that showing too much emotion made them vulnerable. Perhaps they were ignored when they expressed their feelings. Perhaps they were criticized for being sensitive. Perhaps they trusted the wrong people and experienced betrayal. Whatever the reason, they began believing that keeping emotions locked away was safer than allowing anyone to see what was truly happening inside. But here is the irony. The very silence they used to protect themselves often creates the pain they were trying to avoid. Relationships cannot thrive without communication. Trust cannot grow where honesty is absent. Love cannot flourish when fear is allowed to speak louder than the heart. Emotional withdrawal may provide temporary relief, but it slowly builds permanent distance. Every conversation avoided becomes another brick in a wall that separates two people who may genuinely care about each other. Life continually reminds us that what we refuse to face will eventually control us. Avoiding emotions does not eliminate them. It simply stores them beneath the surface where they continue influencing decisions, reactions, and relationships. Unspoken fears become hidden burdens. Unexpressed pain becomes emotional weight. The heart was never created to carry that weight forever. Healing begins when truth is allowed to replace fear and when honesty becomes stronger than the instinct to hide. There is also an important lesson for those who find themselves on the receiving end of someone's silence. Do not automatically interpret every quiet moment as a statement about your worth. Another person's inability to communicate often reflects their internal struggles more than your value. Their silence may reveal unresolved wounds, not a lack of appreciation for who you are. This understanding does not excuse unhealthy behavior, but it does provide wisdom. Wisdom allows you to respond with clarity instead of reacting from insecurity. At the same time, compassion should never require you to abandon your own emotional needs. Healthy relationships are built on mutual effort, openness, and respect. Understanding why someone withdraws does not mean accepting endless emotional distance. Love grows where both people are willing to communicate, listen, and grow together. One person cannot carry the entire relationship while the other remains hidden behind walls of fear. The beautiful truth is that transformation is always possible. Every person has the capacity to learn healthier ways of expressing emotions. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to speak even when fear is present. Every honest conversation weakens the grip of old wounds. Every vulnerable moment proves that trust is stronger than anxiety. Every step toward openness replaces isolation with connection. Remember this whenever silence tempts you to believe the worst. Not every quiet heart is an empty heart. Sometimes the loudest battles are fought without words. But lasting freedom comes when fear no longer controls the conversation, and truth finally finds the courage to be spoken. That is where healing begins, relationships deepen, and genuine peace takes the place of emotional hiding. One of the greatest contradictions within an avoidant person is that they often crave the very thing they seem to resist. They long for love, closeness, and genuine connection, yet when those things begin to appear, something inside them urges them to step back. This contradiction is confusing not only for the people around them, but also for the avoidant person themselves. Their heart says, move closer, while their fear whispers, don't lose yourself. They are caught in a silent battle between the desire for intimacy and the need for emotional safety. The fear is rarely about love itself. It is about what love represents. To someone with avoidant tendencies, intimacy can feel like giving up control. Depending on another person may feel dangerous because it creates the possibility of disappointment, rejection, or heartbreak. The closer they become to someone, the greater the emotional risk appears. Instead of experiencing closeness as a source of comfort, they may unconsciously experience it as a threat to their independence. Their instinct is not necessarily to reject the person they care about, but to protect themselves from the vulnerability that deep connection requires. This fear often has deep roots. It may begin in childhood, where emotional needs were ignored, criticized, or met inconsistently. A young heart that repeatedly learns it cannot rely on others starts believing that self-reliance is the only safe path. Over time, this belief becomes part of a person's identity. They tell themselves they do not need anyone. They convince themselves that complete independence is strength. Yet beneath that carefully constructed image is the same human heart that longs to be understood, accepted, and loved. The challenge is that true intimacy can never exist without vulnerability. Every meaningful relationship requires trust. Every lasting connection requires two people who are willing to be seen as they truly are. Fear constantly argues that vulnerability will lead to pain, while wisdom reminds us that vulnerability is also the birthplace of love, growth, and authentic relationships. You cannot experience one without risking the other. The walls that protect you from heartbreak also prevent genuine connection from entering your life. There is a timeless principle woven into the way we were created. Love flourishes where trust is stronger than fear. We were not designed to walk through life completely alone, carrying every burden without support. We were created for meaningful relationships that reflect honesty, grace, encouragement, and mutual growth. Independence is valuable when it produces responsibility and confidence, but it becomes destructive when it isolates the heart from the very connections it was created to enjoy. Real strength is not refusing to need anyone. Real strength is having the courage to build healthy relationships without losing your proper identity. If you have ever loved someone who struggled with this fear, remember that their hesitation is not always a measure of your worth. Their internal conflict began long before your paths crossed. They may genuinely appreciate your presence while simultaneously battling beliefs that tell them closeness is dangerous. Understanding this can replace confusion with compassion. However, compassion should never become permission to accept emotional neglect. Healthy love requires effort from both people. Growth must be mutual, not one-sided. For those who recognize these patterns within themselves, there is incredible hope. The beliefs that once protected you do not have to control your future forever. Every day offers a new opportunity to replace fear with faith, isolation with connection, and self-protection with healthy trust. Freedom begins when you realize that independence and intimacy are not enemies. You can remain true to yourself while allowing someone else to walk beside you. You can protect your peace without closing your heart. You can value your individuality without rejecting meaningful connection. The most fulfilling relationships are not built by people who never feel fear. They are built by people who choose love even when fear is present. They understand that courage is not found in emotional distance, but in emotional honesty. They know that true freedom is not the absence of dependence. It is the confidence to love, without allowing fear to dictate every decision. When fear no longer sits on the throne of your heart, love is finally free to become what it was always meant to be, a source of strength, purpose, healing, and lasting peace. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is believing that words are the only proof of love. We often expect affection to arrive through long conversations, heartfelt confessions, and constant reassurance. But not everyone has learned to communicate that way. Some people, especially those with avoidant tendencies, struggle to put their emotions into words. That does not always mean those emotions do not exist. In many cases, what they cannot express verbally, they reveal quietly through their actions. If you only listen to their words, you may miss what their behavior has been trying to say all along. Actions have a unique power because they often reveal what the heart struggles to speak. An avoidant person may rarely say, "I miss you," yet they remember the smallest details about your life. They may not openly declare their feelings, yet they check to see if you arrived home safely. They may not initiate emotional conversations, but they consistently show up when you genuinely need support. These actions may seem small, but they often carry a depth of meaning that words alone cannot capture. Their heart communicates through consistency rather than conversation, through presence rather than poetry. This does not mean every action should be overanalyzed, or every act of kindness should be mistaken for hidden love. Wisdom requires balance. The goal is not to create stories where none exist, but to recognize that human beings express care in different ways. Some speak love fluently with their words. Others reveal it through loyalty, quiet sacrifice, thoughtful gestures, or simply remaining present during difficult seasons. The language of love is not always spoken aloud. Sometimes it is demonstrated through ordinary moments that carry extraordinary significance. The challenge for avoidant individuals is that their actions and their words often appear disconnected. They may genuinely care about someone, yet when asked directly how they feel, fear causes them to minimize or deny those emotions. This contradiction confuses both people. The person receiving mixed signals wonders what is true, while the avoidant person struggles with the tension between what they feel and what they believe is safe to express. Fear convinces them that revealing too much emotion will make them vulnerable. As a result, their actions move toward connection, while their words retreat into distance. There is a timeless principle that reminds us that genuine character is revealed through consistent behavior. Anyone can make promises in moments of emotion, but lasting integrity is demonstrated through daily choices. Relationships are strengthened not merely by beautiful declarations, but by dependable actions that build trust over time. A kind word has value, but a faithful action gives that word credibility. Love grows strongest when words and actions eventually align, creating an atmosphere where trust can flourish. At the same time, it is important to remember that actions should never become an excuse for emotional unavailability. Healthy relationships require both demonstration and communication. Acts of kindness are meaningful, but they cannot permanently replace honest conversations. A relationship cannot thrive on assumptions alone. Sooner or later, truth must be spoken. Feelings must be expressed. Needs must be communicated. Silence may protect comfort in the short term, but honesty creates security for the future. If you are someone who struggles to express your emotions, understand that courage is developed one conversation at a time. You do not have to become a different person overnight. You simply have to take one step beyond your fear. Every honest sentence weakens the grip of emotional avoidance. Every vulnerable conversation teaches your heart that openness is not the enemy. With practice, the walls that once seemed necessary begin to lose their power. If you are waiting for someone else's actions to define your worth, remember this truth as well. Their behavior may reveal their internal struggle, but it should never determine your value. You deserve relationships where care is not hidden behind endless uncertainty. Real love is not a puzzle designed to keep you guessing forever. As people heal, their actions and their words begin to tell the same story. That is where trust is born. That is where peace replaces confusion. And that is where relationships become strong enough to reflect the kind of connection we were created to experience. One built on honesty, consistency, compassion, and the courage to let both actions and words speak from the same sincere heart. Every meaningful transformation begins with a single decision, the decision to stop allowing fear to lead your life. Fear has a powerful way of disguising itself as wisdom. It tells you that keeping people at a distance is strength. It convinces you that hiding your emotions is maturity. It whispers that if you never become too attached, you can never be deeply hurt. But while fear promises protection, it often delivers isolation. It builds walls that keep pain out, yet those same walls also keep love, trust, peace, wise and genuine connection from coming in. Healing begins the moment you recognize that the life fear has been protecting is far smaller than the life you were created to live. Avoidant patterns are rarely the result of a lack of desire for connection. More often, they are the result of old wounds that have never been fully healed. Painful experiences leave impressions on the heart. Repeated disappointment can create beliefs that feel permanent. A person begins to think, if I depend on someone, they will leave. If I open my heart, I will be rejected. If I show weakness, I will lose control. These beliefs become invisible chains that shape every relationship. Over time, fear no longer feels like a choice. It feels like part of your identity. Yet identity built on fear is never your true identity. The beautiful truth is that no matter how long fear has influenced your decisions, it does not have to determine your future. The past may explain why you built emotional walls, but it does not require you to live behind them forever. Every new day is an invitation to rewrite old stories. Every act of courage weakens the grip of yesterday's pain. Healing is not about pretending the wounds never existed. It is about refusing to let those wounds become the author of the rest of your life. Trust is one of the greatest gifts you can develop, but trust does not begin by blindly depending on other people. It begins by trusting that growth is possible. It begins by believing that your painful experiences were chapters of your story, not the entire book. The Creator has given every human being the incredible ability to grow beyond past limitations. You are not permanently defined by your disappointments. You are not forever trapped by your fears. Grace provides the opportunity to become someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than the person pain tried to shape. This journey requires vulnerability, and vulnerability often feels uncomfortable because it asks you to release control. But consider this. Every meaningful achievement in life requires stepping into uncertainty. You cannot build a business without risk. You cannot pursue a dream without facing failure. You cannot discover your full potential while remaining inside your comfort zone. Relationships are no different. Love requires courage because love asks you to be seen. It asks you to believe that connection is worth the possibility of disappointment. That is not weakness. It is one of the greatest demonstrations of inner strength. Healing also demands responsibility. While your past may not have been your choice, your future is. You cannot always control what happened to you, but you can choose how you respond today. You can choose to seek wisdom instead of repeating destructive patterns. You can choose honest conversations instead of silent withdrawal. You can choose forgiveness instead of carrying bitterness. Most importantly, you can choose faith over fear. Every one of these choices becomes another step toward emotional freedom. There is a profound difference between surviving and truly living. Survival keeps your heart guarded, your expectations low, and your relationships distant. Living with purpose allows you to experience the richness of authentic connection. It gives you the freedom to love without constantly calculating every possible outcome. It teaches you that strength is not measured by how little you feel, but by how faithfully you live, according to truth instead of fear. As healing continues, something remarkable happens. The walls that once felt essential begin to disappear. Conversations become easier. Trust becomes more natural. Relationships stop feeling like threats and begin feeling like opportunities for growth. You no longer spend your energy protecting yourself from every possible hurt. Instead, you invest that energy into building a life marked by honesty, compassion, wisdom, and meaningful connection. That is the true victory. It is not becoming fearless. It is refusing to let fear remain in charge. When trust becomes greater than fear, your heart discovers the freedom it has been searching for all along, and you finally experience the peace that comes from living with openness, purpose, and unwavering faith. Perhaps the most liberating truth you will ever discover is this: your worth has never been determined by another person's ability to love you. Too many people spend years measuring their value by someone else's attention, affection, or emotional availability. They believe that if someone pulls away, they must not be enough. If someone becomes distant, they must have done something wrong. If someone cannot express love, they assume they are unworthy of receiving it. But that belief is one of the greatest lies fear can ever plant in the human heart. Your value is not created by another person's opinion, and it cannot be destroyed by another person's limitations. When an avoidant person struggles to express care, it often reflects their internal battle rather than your personal value. They may be wrestling with fears that existed long before they met you. They may have learned to hide their emotions because vulnerability once led to disappointment. They may desperately want connection while simultaneously fearing everything that genuine intimacy requires. None of those struggles diminish who you are. Their emotional availability is about their journey, not your identity. One of the greatest mistakes people make is chasing validation instead of building new confidence. Validation depends on circumstances that constantly change. Today someone praises you, tomorrow they criticize you. Today someone chooses you, tomorrow they may walk away. If your confidence rises and falls with every person's opinion, you will never experience lasting peace. Real confidence is built from within. It comes from knowing who you are even when others fail to recognize your value. It comes from understanding that your purpose is greater than any temporary rejection you may experience. There is a timeless truth that every person is created with inherent dignity and purpose. Your life has meaning long before anyone applauds you. Your worth existed before your first relationship, and it will remain after every disappointment. The Creator never intended for your identity to be placed in the hands of people whose emotions, opinions, and decisions change with time. Your identity is rooted in something far more stable. It is rooted in the truth that you were created intentionally, gifted uniquely, and called to live with purpose. When you truly embrace that truth, rejection loses its power to define you. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of asking, why wasn't I enough? You begin asking, what kind of relationships reflect the life I am called to live? Instead of desperately trying to convince someone to stay, you begin valuing mutual effort, mutual respect, and mutual growth. You stop chasing people who repeatedly communicate through inconsistency, and you begin investing your energy where trust, honesty, and commitment are freely offered. Healthy love is not about proving your worth. Healthy love is about two people bringing their best selves together and helping each other become even better. That does not mean you stop loving people with compassion. It simply means you stop sacrificing your peace to earn affection that should never require endless pursuit. Love without boundaries becomes exhaustion. Compassion without wisdom becomes self-neglect. You can care deeply about someone while also recognizing that you deserve relationships where communication, respect, and emotional responsibility flow in both directions. Choosing peace is not selfish. It is an act of honoring the life you have been given. Every challenge you face also presents an opportunity to strengthen your character. Rejection can either convince you that you are unworthy, or it can remind you that not every relationship is meant to define your future. Disappointment can either make your heart harder, or it can make your wisdom deeper. Every experience becomes a teacher when you refuse to let it become your identity. The strongest people are not those who have never been hurt. They are those who learn to rise without allowing pain to steal their purpose. As you move forward, remember this every single day. Your value does not increase when someone chooses you. and it does not decrease when someone cannot. Your worth is constant because it was never based on human approval. Walk with confidence, not because life will always be easy, but because you know who you are. Build relationships that reflect honesty, kindness, faith, and mutual respect. Release the need to earn love from those who are unwilling or unable to give it. The right people will never require you to question your value. They will recognize it, honor it, and encourage you to become everything you were created to be. When you finally understand that truth, you stop living for acceptance and start living with purpose, freedom, and unshakable confidence that no rejection can ever take away.